our sponsor, the crew patch. This is suiting up before we're getting ready to go. Terry Wilcutt, the pilot. Jay Apt, MS1. MS2, Tom Akers. MS3, Carl Waltz. And John. NASA Mir number 3. On our way out to the Astrovan. Still awfully, awfully dark at that hour of the morning, let me tell you. About to light up, though, big time. 6 seconds there prior to liftoff. The main engines come up to thrust. And we're on our way. First master alarm. The doggone thing was shaking so much that Terry and I had a real time trying to read the scratch pad line of what was going on. Fortunately, we had Tom there to mid-value select between the pilot and the commander, and he properly informed us what was going on with our vehicle. I think the folks that were there at the Cape had a real spectacular view, not only of the SRB separation here, a little after 2 minutes, but all the way up the East Coast. We're going to get a little bit closer view here, and a special camera in the umbilical wells that was able to capture that. Unfortunately, the external tank came off in darkness, so there wasn't any residual light from the main engines or anything to capture that.
Well, once we got on orbit, we opened the payload bay doors to reject some of the heat, of course, produced by the fuel cells, and got our first real good look at the space hab and the back end of the payload bay and the orbiter docking system and the trajectory control sensors, those boxes right on the beam in the front of the cargo bay. Very happy to see everything was in good shape. We opened up the hatch to get back into the space hab a couple hours after launch, after verification that all of the atmosphere back there was good. And it's the first flight of a new habitable volume. It went just great. What a wonderful place to work and have all the logistics and live and sleep. It was just huge. I mean, it was like a big building inside. And those of you who have offices around JSC know what I mean when I say this is a lot bigger than any office I've ever had. Terry's getting ready here to transfer some of the water, specifically squeezing out a sample into a sample bag for analysis on the ground. And boy, it's a good thing he was in the best shape of anybody on the crew, except maybe Shannon, to go do that. It was pretty hard. Here we are checking out one of the JSC experiments on board a bioreactor, so-called. It is designed to supply nutrients to all sides of a cell in 3 dimensions. Unlike a 2-dimensional petri dish, cells can grow just like they do in the living body. We took sterile samples of that, as John will do every week that he's up on orbit, to ensure for the principal investigator, a doctor up at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that everything is working well. If all goes well, we'll learn how well cartilage, like is in your knees or your nose, grows up there on orbit. Here we are on the second day of the flight, preparing the active rack isolation system, a risk mitigation experiment for space station, for test. We tilted the rack out, just as people will do hundreds of times on the International Space Station. And this thing that about the size of a big vending machine here, and about the same weight too, we're real careful with, and took all 3 of us to get that out there and make sure it was all in good shape. Then Carl and I went to work setting it up for what turned out to be many days of tests on board. The idea of that system was to isolate the small vibrations that you have in space for the benefit of experiments such as this one. This is a furnace that was to melt metals. Sintered metals are used in everything from machine tools to exotic space structures. Here we are inserting a sample into that furnace for melting and later analysis on the ground. Back in the back, Tom was examining all of his transfer items and getting everything ready for transfer, and here he's getting a computer out that John will need on Mir and putting it into a bag where it can be efficiently transferred as soon as we get docked. He did a fabulous job getting everything ready so that when we docked, bang, it was ready, and everything got over. It was just super.
That bright star that you see in the center of the optical site there is the Mir station. And at this point, we're about 2 miles away. And we're going to show you just a couple time slices here. Now we're about a mile away. Now we're getting to about 600 feet. And this is how we had the cockpit laid out. Terry was in the front, and he was doing the mid-course burns. Jay had the master checklist. And then Tom was doing the handheld laser, and Carl was working the camera as well. John was our communicator. And that left me free to do a little bit of flying. And what you can see here are the forward reaction control jets firing as we're approaching the Mir station. This is approximately 170 feet as we're continuing to close, and you can see the whole Mir station at that point. Shannon's eye view of us on our approach. Here we're about 10 feet, and you can see the docking module very well coming into the payload bay. And this is a view out of our truss camera that was located adjacent to our docking system. And you can see that the closure is just ever so slow. It's about a yard in 30 seconds, so you almost can't walk that slowly. About this time, Tom is calling pedal overlap, and then when we get to 2 inches, we fire post-contact thrusters to just nudge the two vehicles together so that we get a hard docking.
And there was great rejoicing.
On the other side of the hatch, too.
And this is Shannon in the docking module, waiting expectantly for our hatch to open here. And Bill is doing that right now. And of course, the Mir 22 crew, Valerie and Sasha and Shannon are there on the other side waiting for us. So Bill goes to shake Valerie's hand and gets brought into the docking module here. And this is a view from their camera on board Mir. And of course, it was a great, just a tremendous celebration, meeting together in space. And of course, here's John and Shannon. Glad to be together again after about a 6-month separation since they were training together at Star City. And Shannon had the traditional greeting of bread and salt. It's a traditional Russian greeting, and we celebrated together.
Well, with Mir hard docked to the shuttle and the welcoming ceremonies complete, it was time to go to work, and we got quite a bit of the transfer operations done that first day. This is Terry and I back in the Space Hab. You can see one of the large Russian pieces of hardware we were bringing home already there, a Kurs unit. We had 2 of those. We also did, for the first time, powered transfers, where we had scientific experiments under power on shuttle that we powered down and then moved over to Mir. This is Jay, one of 2 incubators that keep a controlled temperature environment for several different varieties of samples in those. Took it over to the new module on Mir, Peroda, and inserted it in a locker and powered it up. During all of the transfer operations and other activities, Shannon, every day we were there, exercised for 2 hours each day here on the treadmill in the base block. And one of the final transfer items, which Carl mentioned, was the 350 pounds of Russian food we had in the Eris experiment. And this is just checking to make sure we hadn't left any in before we stowed the empty containers.
Now we'll take a quick tour of Mir. This was my home for 6 months. Now, as you see, we're going through here. We were going through the docking module, and now this is in Crystal. You can see that there's lots of ventilation tubes, there's lots of wires, there's lots of equipment that's stored there, and there's a bungee cord that sort of helps you navigate back and forth. First we're going to stop off here at the greenhouse. Due to the slip, I was fortunate and was able to get this started, and it was really sort of neat to see the wheat, see it start to grow. It reminded me of Oklahoma, where I used to live. And For the first time, just before I left, the wheat was actually going to seed. And so for the first time in space, we had started with a seed and it had gone to seed. And so I think that's just pretty neat. Going on, this is Perota, the new module that came while I was there. And it's full of various scientific equipment. As you can see, there's the glove box, and it just worked outstanding. Actually, everything all the United States equipment that was there in Perota worked really, really well. This chair there in the middle is one of the French experiments that came up on Progress, and it's left there. There's just lots of equipment in Mir. There's German equipment, French equipment, there's the United States equipment, and it's all there. And it's very difficult to find places to store stuff. In the back of Perota, you can see the BTS and the rest of the United States experiments. Now, this is the node, and everything joins up here. And after Perota came and then after Progress came, Yuri pointed out to me that for the first time in the history of the station of Mir, all the nodes were occupied, and that was a new record. That's what it was designed for, and that's how it got set up. Oh, and this is inside Soyuz, which was there, and there's our scaphanders. In case there was an emergency, we could have gotten in the Soyuz and come home. And the Soyuz is still there, and it's the return vehicle for Valery and Sasha. This is in the base block, and you can see the table back there. Valery's back there by the table. The table was sort of the central place in Mir, and that's where if you weren't working somewhere else, you sort of congregated there to talk to the ground, eat, and do all the various activities that you'd have. And then you could look, the cosmonauts each had a small cabin on each side, which was very nice. They could keep their personal things there, and then they had a little window that they could look out. And this happens to be Sasha's little cabin, and the pictures of his family. He has a 3-month-old son, and so he had his pictures hanging up there. And then all their personal equipment, their toothpaste and everything could be kept in one place. And then the sleeping bag was hung up on the wall. And as you looked out the window when the shuttle was there, then you could see the shuttle dock there. Also in the base block was a ham radio, and we used it to talk many times when we were coming over Houston. You could talk to your family, and Valery and Sasha also liked to use the ham radio a lot. This is another view in the base block going toward the Centralno post, and Valery was headed in that direction. And you can see the bungee cords that were stretched out there that help you navigate back and forth. This is Inspector. John has just moved in. It was all nice and clean and all picked up, but then all the new stuff got in there. And you can see I like to read. I had lots of books. I put them in a bookcase up there about halfway through the flight. And Yuri came in and he looked and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I like to have my books out. I like to look at it. It makes me feel good." And he said, "Well, what's John going to think about that?" And I said, "Well, he's not here." And this is the back end of Spectre. And you can see those are the big gray things are 2 cameras. Earth viewing cameras. But then those white bags are all the science equipment that we transferred over for John, and they're all stacked up there. And then that's where I had all the bags of science equipment stacked up to take over to the shuttle.
This is another one of the large storms we saw where we were up there, Typhoon Yates. Fortunately, none of them were around KSC on the 26th. They were just simply spectacular. If you could see those at night, you saw all kinds of lightning. We had the Mir crew over to the shuttle for a dinner that we hosted. We treated them to some freeze-dried local Cajun barbecue. They enjoyed that very much. Then it was time to go, unfortunately. We had our formal farewell ceremony, said goodbye to really 2 very close friends of ours, Valery and Sasha. And then we said goodbye to the new Mir crew member. And it was a very emotional flight, I'd have to say. It was emotional picking Shannon up, and it was emotional saying goodbye to John. If you look at the hatch that they're closing, you can see the docking target on it. And if you looked carefully at a still picture, you could see the repair we made to it while we were up there. This is the undocking early in the morning. There's springs in the docking mechanism that push the 2 space vehicles apart. And then once you get 2 feet away, we activate the jets, and then Bill gave some pulses to separate us at a more rapid rate. This is a view out one of the truss camera, we call it. It's an alternate docking camera. Again, there goes the docking module away from us. We drifted out to about 150 feet, and then Bill and I traded places so that I could do the fly around. And my hat's off to all the ground people that arranged the timing, so we got pictures like this. This is the southern island of New Zealand. The Southern Alps are on there. Our geologists are particularly interested in this area because it has a lot of volcanoes and some geologic faults. Again, the mirror in another attitude during the fly around. It seemed to change colors depending on how close we were to the terminator. It was really, really beautiful. This is off the coast of Australia, and that's that island that the mirror is approaching right now is Fraser Island, and the town of Brisbane is just up the coast from that. Here's the northeastern part of Australia again. It's one of the capes up there, and what you've got on the left side as we look at it is the Great Barrier Reef, and on the right side of Australia there is the Gulf of Carpentaria. Again, we did the fly around to set up shots for the IMAX and again for mirror photo survey. Then it really was time to go home. We finished up the science and the packing in the back and closed the doors. I couldn't figure out why Shannon wanted to watch this, but then we turned our space shuttle into the re-entry vehicle that it was designed to be. The pink out the windows is the fire or the plasma that surrounds the orbiter during re-entry. That stuff seems to reach a critical mass up around the tail, and you get the explosions like that give the orbiter a thump every time you see an explosion. That's sunrise over my right shoulder while we're in a row there. Bill?
Well, we had almost a 360-degree turn to get aligned with runway 15 at the Cape, and it was a right-hand turn all the way around. So I looked at nothing but instruments, and Terry had a real nice view of the Cape. Got rolled out on final, and it was just the most perfect day you can imagine to come back to Florida. Just a light breeze, about 80 degrees, and bright sunshine. Terry put the gear down there at 300 feet. Doing the final flare here at about 50 feet. We never did see the birds, by the way. And they're coming on in. And I'll tell you, the orbiter just handles like a dream. You could see a little bit of oscillation as the drag chute comes out. Nose is cushioned onto the runway by the drag chute disreefing, and then doggone drag chute works so good that you just don't even need any brakes hardly at all, and about 90 knots we just kind of tested them just to make sure they were working. And we stopped with about 3,000 feet to go there at Kennedy Space Center. We had a surprise mystery guest welcome us home. I'll tell you, we were just terrifically honored and proud to be there, to be with Shannon and welcome her home, to be the first to welcome her home, I guess, from space. President Clinton and Mr. Golden. We got a chance to give him one of our crew symbols and crew hat, and of course a Welcome Home Shannon T-shirt. So.